Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'm going to be changing the thermostat on my 2008 Fiat Panda 4x4. Now we ran into a couple of problems with the thermostat. The engine wasn't getting hot at all, there was no reading on the dial whatsoever, and no matter how hard you thrashed it, it would not get hot. My truck, the L200, that had a very similar problem. It would actually get warm, but then it would cool down when I went downhill, which was a bit weird. So we took that one apart and there was no thermostat inside. So I took this one apart, the thermostat was there, everything was in place, it was just old. So I bought a new one, but the problem is I'd already taken the car apart. So the car is in a lot of pieces. If we rewind a little bit, unfortunately I do not have me taking it apart, but of course I've videoed it, putting it back together, and that is exactly the reverse order. So if you follow that backwards, you can figure out how to take it apart. It's really not that difficult at all. Just a few pipes, and it's just actually fiddling to get to the thermostat is actually the hardest bit. Actually, the things you have to take apart isn't that much. Okay, so let's rewind a bit and I will show you the new thermostat. Okay, so here is our lovely new part. You can see we've got a brand spanking new one. This actually was quite difficult to find. I ordered two. This is why it's taken so long. I ordered two. In fact, I ordered the first one and it came with the wrong end here. Now I've got the clip that pushes on and clips onto this ring here, and the other one didn't have this little ring and it wouldn't clip on. So I ordered another one with this was in the photo and it arrived wrong again. So I had to message the people and confirm that this was the actual correct, that it was going to come with this piece. So this was actually quite difficult to find. Now you can see the seal comes here. It's actually wrapped around it here. Hang on, I'll take that off like that. There you go. And that basically slots in this little groove here. So it's a bit like a puzzle. Just got to pop that in. Goes in there like so, and then we're going to get the bolts in, put a little bit of mild strength thread locker on those and waz them back up. Okay, now a little tip that I found when actually putting it all back together and putting pipes on, if you put a tiny little bit of rubber grease, I mean really a small amount, just to ease that sliding back on, and in the future if you ever have to take it off again, they'll come off a lot easier. So that's a little tip there for you. You can see just a tiny bit of grease on all of them, not much at all, just to help with sliding it on and off. So we're going to go back in and put all of those pipes we disconnected back on. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just basically plug in that electrical connector and get that back in to make sure that it's done correctly. Now the camera work's going to be very difficult to show, but there's the plug. So I've got to get that on. And now there's one big pipe at the back which goes on this little part here. And all you've got to do is basically reach in and, being very careful of small wires like this, rearrange your hand and try and get it in the position where you can actually get some kind of hold on it. It's just honestly such a fiddly little job, one that you wouldn't want to do too often, mainly just because it actually hurts your hands more than anything else. That bugger right there with that clip on. Okay, so now that I've got that pipe on, I'm going to tighten up the clamp using a size 7 socket with an adjustable end and a very long adapter, so that I can just nip that up, because it's a lot easier than using a screwdriver. The only screwdriver you could possibly use is a tiny, really short, stubby one, but I don't recommend it because it's nigh on impossible to get any turn on it. So underneath the big pipe here, you can see there's actually a smaller pipe. So I'm going to try and reconnect that, which is underneath here at the moment. Just slide that forwards and get it in. Okay, so down there is that small pipe you can see, right there, if I shine the light on it. There we are. Sorry about the cat, he's meowing. But I'm going to wait before I do out those two clips, and I'm going to get the thermostat now screwed in. Okay, so I've got the bolts with some medium strength thread locker on, and they're going to go straight back in. 2 holes. Now it's just realigning it up correctly and making sure the seal on the back of the thermostat is actually still sitting inside the groove correctly. So just give that a little touch, make sure that's all good. Okay, and now we've got the little second bolt in. Snug that up. Nice and tight on those. We're going to tighten up this small pipe that we put on earlier. Just get that all snugged on there. So pop the Jubilee clips over, get them into position. And since this side's on the metal pipe, you can give this a little bit of a better turn. There we are. They are not coming off of there now. You can see those two are on well and truly. Now moving on to the better parts, the slightly bigger, easier ones. We've got the big pipe that goes on the front. You can see there, that slots on and there's a little groove that slots into right there. Then what we're going to do is we're going to find that Jubilee clip that we slid down right here, and we're going to tighten that up as well. Now that is nicely tight on there, and the last little one that we have to put on is the problem that was caused last time when I bought the wrong one. You can see this little clip. Now that clips onto the metal solid end of the thermostat. So you see that little metal pin there? This is where this clip slots onto. Now I've had trouble finding this part. That was the problem. I couldn't find one with the same end, and I couldn't get this to clip on the last one I ordered. So let's hope this clips on. 3, 2, 1. Oh, yes. Okay, so it fits and it works. That is brilliant news. Reg is saying, let's get the car back together, aren't you, Reg? Let's say hello to everyone. Reggie says hi, guys. Reggie's just been out. He's been out to play, haven't you? He's got a friend that's a dog. Okay, now when putting the car back together, there's this battery tray that sits on here, you can see. And there's these tiny little clips where this actually pops into. So when you get that down, realign it up with these clips. So we'll take that off there and we'll fold this down, making sure to keep this out of the way. And then there's a small bolt that slots over, and that is back into position. Now before you get it all done up, put the wiring loom clips back in so that you can move the tray. It makes it a bit easier before you do it up. Okay, so we've got 3. We've got 1 right down here, there's a nut, and then there's 2 just here which are bolts. And they're all going to get a bit of medium strength thread locker. And these are all size 13mm. So we just put the 2 in there to get this a bit more secure. Okay, now for this one you don't want to drop it because you can see there's a hole and it's a nut. So I found that a pair of needle nose pliers, if you grip right at the top of the thread, you can actually get it down there and just do 1 turn onto the thread, which in turn obviously keeps it in the right position. And then you can get a socket on it. So I just do 1 piece down. 2. There's 1. There's number 2. There we go. And 1 nice firm turn on there. Okay, so here's the drainage tray that the battery sits on. It's got this little pipe on it. It's got a kink in it, but it's got a pipe for draining. Of course, if it gets wet in the engine bay, this can always drain the water away. So there's a small hole down here, which this goes in. And I'm just going to feed that through and down and then sit this in. It's very easy. It goes in its own accord, really, like that. Okay, so we pop it in the back and then it sits over the threads like that. Just like that. Perfect. And now the battery's ready to go back in. Okay, now when you put the battery back in, the positives on the left side here and the negatives on the right. Now this strap goes over and actually bolts onto, there's a little thread down there, and that bolts onto that. So we'll tighten that down next. And that just clamps the battery down nice and secure, so you can go jumping it off-road and it won't go anywhere. Okay, and our last job before we connect the battery up is to put on the air box. Now you can see I've got it in my hand. So the mass sensor's got this pipe with an O-ring on, and it slots into here. And then there's 2 little 10mm bolts that do it up. And this, of course, clips into the intake, the air intake hole, which is right here behind the grille. Okay, so the air box actually got 3 little bits that it slots into. There's a little hole at the back which it pushes into. Then when it comes down, it goes over these 2 right here. So what we do is we put that little devil, which I've put a little bit of grease on, in the back. So just line that up like that. That's slotted in. We push the air intake pipe, so that goes down behind the grille there and slots into a tiny little hole. Now we've got these pins lined up, we're just going to push those over, 1 and 2. You can feel those pop. And if we move you in a bit closer, we've got the MAF sensor to connect. So there's a low ring on there. If you put really a tiny amount of rubber grease on there, and then we can wiggle that into position. As you'll feel it, it slots in and it should stay in place. If it pops back out, you haven't pushed it in far enough. And now these are two little 10mm bolts that hold the MAF sensor in place. Okay, there we are. Okay, so I'm going to start filling this up, and I've got a bucket underneath to catch any fluid if anything does come out, but since I've tightened everything up, it shouldn't need it. And what we're going to do is we're going to start up the car, and then we'll let this bubble through, and of course keeping an eye on it, topping it up when it needs it. So we'll get the car down and we'll start it up. So the engine's running okay. I'm going to leave it for about 15 minutes, let it get up to temperature, and then I will report back. Okay, so I've taken the Panda around the block a few times. It got up to temperature perfectly, and it stayed there. The fan came on and cooled it back down. It was perfectly staying at the right temperature. The expansion tank actually hasn't lost as much fluid as I thought, so when this is fully cool, I'll take the cap off and just pipette that down to the correct level. Car runs fine, brilliant. The only other thing I've got to do is adjust the clutch, but that's going to be probably another video actually, if I can learn how to do it and figure it out. Anyone in the comments, if you know how to adjust the clutch on one of these Pandas, this 2008 model, please let me know in the comment section, because that would be a massive help. I've been looking it up, but there's not much on the Pandas. And the problem I have is when I go into reverse, it grinds the gear. Other than that, it drives beautifully. It's just the reverse gear, like Graunches. So that would be nice if any of you know how to sort of help that in the comment section below. But this install, I do apologise about obviously not showing the first half, but I showed you the reverse of it, so you know sort of roughly how to do it the other way. But I did think it was worth showing because there's actually not much on this car at all. And I really enjoyed doing this actually, it was quite interesting. A bit fiddly, but yet again, really good fun. So hopefully you'll enjoy the video, and I will catch you in the next one.